Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and today I'm delighted to be joined remotely by Lawrence Connolly. Where are you calling in from, Lawrence?
Calling from Rutherglen, only a mile or so from Paradise, mate.
Paradise, it's been a long time since we were there. It's been a long time. How big a part's that playing, do you think, in Celtic's current malaise?
Huge, mate. I think it's absolutely huge. I mean, every player that plays there says, the fans, they lift as they drive us on. It's definitely missing, I think it's easier for them to drop performance, and not hit top gear when they don't have that interaction with the supporters. It's incredible pressure the team's under, isn't it? 4 trebles, possibly 5 in a row, and 10 in a row titles. Incredible pressure, especially now they're not playing well. They could really be doing with every little bit of help they could get.
Yeah, I mean, it is a massive amount of pressure, Lawrence. I think when we look at the team, and they were praised just the other week there by Neil Lennon, they are used to that kind of pressure. Now, I know that we've brought in 6 new players, but obviously El Yunusi's been part of the team for a year. He knows the demands, he knows the standards. So 5 new players coming into the squad, that's fair enough. But I think when you join a team like Celtic, you know the demands of that. So on one hand, we get a lot of fans saying, well, a lot of these guys aren't interested in 10 in a row, but then on the other hand, they're buckling under the pressure of 10 in a row. I'm of the view that if you join a big club like Celtic, you know that you're there to win titles. So you know what the standards are in front of you. Now, we're getting loads of great messages coming through. Robert Highland, good afternoon, welcome to the show. Philip DeMarco, and also Tosh Bear, Grills Junior Malone, which is the name of the day. But we will be engaging with as many of you as possible. The Axon Bulletin has become our staple diet, Lawrence, and obviously, even with the restrictions in terms of travel, we're still going to go ahead and speak to people like yourself, and apparently you're from Ruggie, not Rutherglen, according to Robert P. Arbuckle.
Yep. It's true, it's Ruggie. I mean, I'm actually from Whitleyburn. I just stay in Ruggie, but it's true. It's more commonly referred to as Ruggie or Rugland.
Well, I mean, on a day-to-day basis, obviously we cover Celtic news, topics and discussions, and I was talking to someone yesterday from the Scottish media who asked me the question, how on earth can you speak about Celtic every single day on the show? It's particularly easy. I mean, when we're talking after an hour, Lawrence, we could go on and on because there's so many comments coming in, and that's what's key to it. So apologies if sometimes we go through shows and we don't get more people involved. It is always our intention to get as many folk involved as possible. Now, I understand that a lot of the things we're talking about are dividing people's opinions, Lawrence, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to fall out with fellow Celtic fans over it. Let's have a chat, let's have a debate about it. So there seems to be 2 camps at the moment. There seems to be a fair bit of silence from Celtic Park. I mean, a lot of fans noticed yesterday their social media, which is normally constant, particularly at this time of year, there was nothing. It was just like you could hear a pin drop on Celtic social media. Yeah,
website getting updated. I think all we got was the ladies 6-2 win over Hibs, wasn't it? And the website's been updated, but don't worry, you can still buy stuff from the shop.
Yes, yeah, I know. I made that point with the Christmas advert as well. What's the message here? Buy the jersey. John Sweeney, nothing changes. We carry on as before going into games. No game plan, no tactics, no defence. I think previously we looked at the game against Lille as an opportunity to get back on track. How many times have we heard that this season? Get back on track, after the disappointment of the previous results against Aberdeen, AC Milan and of course Rangers, and it looked for about an hour that we were back on track. You look at that French league, they're still sitting second. cracking result even to this day. In many ways, we threw away a 2-goal lead. And that's how I'm viewing the European games at the moment, Lawrence, trying to get back on track because, contrary to some people's belief, at no point did I ever want to see a goal scored against Celtic, never mind a defeat, never mind a draw. I was cheering like everybody else when Laxalt scored the equaliser against Hibs. I still want Neil Lennon to turn this round. I don't have a vendetta against Lenny or anyone at Celtic because Celtic are the priority. But, what happens if we go against Sparta Prague and play like we did the last time we faced them and it was a weakened side we faced? I fear on Thursday night, if nothing changes as John suggests there, I fear that we're going to be on the end of a hiding.
Yeah, think about it. Who's nailed down their place in the Celtic team? In that first 11. If we're saying there's no tactics, no change, a lot of this is down to the players. Are all underperforming. Some of it's down to the tactics, something it's down to shape, but the players have got to take huge responsibility for the level of performance and the schoolboy errors that some of them are making.
Well, on that point, Lennon, I'm calling you Lennon now, got Neil Lennon on the brain. On that point, Lawrence, if that's the case, right, let's say, right, that's the case, let's put it on the players at the moment, right? Now, if that's been the case all season, and a coaching staff led by Neil Lennon, who's the manager, who should be making the decisions and should be the leader in the realms of the coaching staff, if he has failed to turn that round and get a tune out of the players, if we're blaming the players, right? If that's the argument.
I'm saying it's a mixture. I'm not saying it's all the players.
No, I take that. I totally get that because you're looking at a lot of the form. I mean, even one player, El Yunusi, you watch him against Motherwell, he scores a hat-trick. Yeah, against Hibs, he looks like a different player. So, I totally get that. So who is, if Lenny can't get that consistency out of them, who can? Is it a case, because again, I know that over the weeks, Lawrence, you were very much, you and I had some great debates over the last few weeks about it's Lenny and you're supporting Lennon, and I'm not against Lennon, but I am blaming him for a big part of this. Is that still where we are in terms of this debate? Are you still on the side of Neil Lennon staying at Celtic?
I think there's been a change in Lenny coming out the last few games saying, can't defend him. Ultimately, he's got to be the guy that has the answers, isn't he? Ultimately, he leads the team. He sets the team out. And if he's out of answers, if that's what he's saying, it's a bad place for any football manager to be, isn't it? To be out of answers.
When I was looking at it, no, you're spot on, Lawrence. When I was looking at the game against Hibs, and I spent the morning in the studio speaking to a Hibs fan who didn't travel out with the area that I'm in, by the way, talking to a Hibs fan, and it was quite a good insight actually because he was giving us it from the other side, and what he was actually saying to me, which I found interesting because sometimes you don't think like this, he's talking as a Hibs fan who was brought up from his father and his grandfather all being Hibs fans, talking about the fact that there's a mentality that Celtic will always beat you. He says the mentality has been, until recently, that Rangers would always beat you. And it's ingrained in the fan base and it's ingrained in the psyche, not just in the last 10 years of domination from Celtic, he says, but beyond that, his whole football supporting life, you expect to be beat by Celtic. He says, but this season, that fear is gone. He actually says that fear is gone. So they're coming into the game at the weekend, they're thinking, we want a result. We're going to get a result here. And of course, the way the game went, they were absolutely devastated when they came away with a draw. Now, to be devastated to come away from Easter Road, having played 9 times in a row champion Celtic with a draw, I think tells its own story.
Yeah, 2-0 up. Brown gives away the penalty. What he was thinking, who knows? Then you get Frimpong and Beaton don't follow it in. Nisbet takes his goal well, but no one tracks him as a runner. It's really basic stuff at the back that's letting us down.
That is basic, yeah.
If Bain's anything, he's got a cracking chance of saving a penalty, hasn't he? We know he's good on penalties. So, you could maybe say if Craig Gordon been in, you could maybe let them off for not falling the ball in. They're kind of, he's not expecting it.
He resigned to the fact that it's going to be scored first time round. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you're screaming at that, Lawrence. Just as a casual football fan, you're screaming at that because it's so basic. It's fundamental defending. You remember doing it under 12s, following the ball in,
Yeah,
that's frustrating
that's
for Neil Lennon. Exactly. But going into that game, you've mentioned Nesbitt. We were at a few games last season when one of the people that came along was a Dunfermline fan, season ticket holder, and they were raving about Nesbitt, raving about this guy. And last season, Dundee United were favourites to sign him. And apparently at one point, they turned down a bid in the January, I think it was, of £500,000, which for a team like Dunfermline, for a club like Dunfermline at that stage, without the German investment that they've since got, was massive. But they at that time probably thought they were still going to be pushing for a playoff place. So they didn't sell Nesbitt until the summer, and I think Hibs probably got him for about $300,000. Now, if you're looking outside of Celtic and Rangers, and you're looking at strikers who have impressed this season, I think most Scottish football fans would have Nesbitt on the top of the list. He's the guy that comes to mind. So you're coming up against Hibs, you're coming up against an informed Nesbitt. I know he missed his penalty against Hearts, but obviously we also know the personal kind of tragedy that befell him before that game. So you're looking at that, you think, well, you need to manage that. That's one of the key areas you need to manage. And what we do is we just go out and we line up like we did against Motherwell. So I don't think, just looking at that, I don't think there's any real planning in terms of who we're playing. It's just like, we're Celtic, same team as a fortnight ago, guys, on you go. So you're facing Nesbitt. And what you're pitching up against Nesbitt is you're pitching a guy who has no pace and near beat on, no pace whatsoever. On the bench, we've got two international centre-halves. Near Beaton is playing out of position. That doesn't make any kind of sense to me when you're up against a striker who probably throughout Scottish football, if you were to ask fans who's really impressed you outside Celtic and Rangers up front this season, he'd be the man. So you need to deal with that. And we line up with Near Beaton, with no pace. And that beggars belief for me. Now, by the way, people might say, well, one of your international centre-halves on the bench is Shane Duffy, who's had a torrid time this season. Yeah, but the other one's El Hamid, who's one of the coolest customers we've got. International centre-half, who can also play full-back, of course. I don't understand the line-up against Hibs, Lawrence. I was bemused by that.
El Hamid wasn't so cool, or maybe it was too cool in Europe earlier on. We lacked pace at the back. I think Lenny identified that before Duffy came in. We were wanting a boy from Sampdoria who's a quick centre-half. We didn't get him. So I think as a team, we definitely lack pace at the back. Diego looks quick. Frimpong looks quick.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have him at right back, though. I don't think Ayer's particularly quick. And we've got Duffy, Beaton, El Hamid, and Big Julian to come back. So it's something that we're going, right, we do lack pace. Maybe it's just that the fact he should be acknowledging that and say, look, don't get too close to him because, he's got a couple of yards on you. Even if it's the same team, there should have been ways of setting up against him to say, right, this is what he's dangerous at. How are you going to manage that in the game? You can't play as tight to him because he's too quick. Yeah. It didn't, I don't know what the was thinking. Well, and in fact, it wasn't a lack of pace that done him. He just didn't track him. So regardless of pace, if you don't make the run, doesn't matter if you're slow or fast.
I just think during the 90 minutes of that game, I found that to be a mismatch when you're looking at their danger man, if you like. And by the way, I think Hibs have got good quality throughout their team. I think that Hanlon and Porteous managed Ayeti without any real problem. But again, I felt that Ayeti was thrown into a situation that he was going to be uncomfortable in. So if you're playing Beaton at centre-half, that's going to be an uncomfortable afternoon for him. Ayeti, up on his own, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember a performance for Celtic where he's played well as a lone striker. I have no doubt he's a quality striker, but not as a lone striker up against that pair.
We'll get Ayeti as because he's underperforming down south. We never really get a chance with West Ham. We've got probably the two best strikers in Scotland. Can't start a game for us. Griffiths is rumoured to be fitness issues. Unsure what it is with French Eddie. He's still doing it at the under 21 level with France. He comes on, we'll look a different team straight away. Is
Eddie counting the days down until January, Lawrence? What's your feeling on that?
We all know that Eddie's going to move on. Now, does he say it January, December? Who's he going to get in January that would come in for him? Would Celtic let him go? Is another question. Does he see his... We need to kind of get to the bottom why he's not playing. Is he just... why is he only coming off the bench? Surely he's got to be a better option than Ayeti to lead the line. Griffith seems to be fitness. We're almost December. It's the tail end of November. And
when are you going to be fit? Yeah, you're absolutely right. You see, when you're looking at and again, a very, very interesting, there was a real point to the discussion I had with the Hibs fan. Because we were talking about Neil Lennon when he was at Hibs, and obviously I also spoke fairly recently to a journalist who had spent some time with Neil Lennon, and I had spoken previously via someone else. I had spoken to someone who was involved in the downfall, if you like, on that fateful afternoon when Neil Lennon left Hibs. So what I'm trying to do is look at some of the reoccurring issues that we might be now looking at Celtic Park. And obviously there was the issue previously that he had with a very specific player in Canberra, which ended out not so well for Neil Lennon because he lost his job. I don't think Canberra himself was a particularly easy guy to get on with if you look at his career since Hibs. But obviously there was a big issue there. A very public spat took place, and it resulted in Neil Lennon finally being relieved of his duties at Hibs. Do you think that there are issues internally on a personal level between Neil Lennon and any of the players who are not performing?
That something's not right, isn't it? Potentially it could be with the manager that if we're not playing, that there's schoolboy errors been made. We've got the two best strikers, they don't play. One for a reason we don't know. One apparently fitness issues. Yet when Griff plays, he scores goals. He makes things happen. It's, would we be a better team starting the two of them up front and getting out of them what we can, rather than waiting until we're 2-0 down and give them 20 minutes, or give them one of them 20 minutes?
That's a good point. I mean, Lee Griffiths came on in 71 minutes. And at that moment in time, we're 2-0 down, Lawrence. So he's come on with 19 minutes to go. Now, I'm not saying it was the Lee Griffiths show, because I didn't get that. What I got was the shape changed. And I think the shape changed for the better. And for the first time, we were actually able to put Porteous and Hanlon on the back foot. And lo and behold, the first goal comes 7 minutes later, obviously via a penalty. And then we scored 91 minutes on the clock. We scored the equaliser. But I think that was, I'm not going to take anything away from Lee Griffiths. I said at the beginning of the game, I would have much rather Griff was involved, particularly for the set pieces and the corner kicks, because I think Christie needs to come off them permanently. But he comes on with 19 minutes to go. We change to two up top. That two up top starts to get in behind the Hibs defence, which we hadn't done for 71 minutes. But we're crying out for that at half time.
Yeah,
we're crying when it's nothing each.
When you've got, especially this season, we've got 5 subs. We can bring them on at 3 separate times, or 4 if you make the substitutions at half time, is it? So we need to definitely get better using subs. When we bring Griff on, he makes things happen. It just seems a strange way to do it, to just give him 20 minutes, surely. He's a professional footballer, he's 29, 30. Surely he's got more than 20 minutes in his tank. And
it's obviously at that point he's matching up with Edouard, and we've seen how effective they were last season. Now, I'm not going to say, the root of all Celtic's ills is the fact we're not playing 2 up front. There's a multitude of reasons, but it's just, that made a massive difference on 71 minutes when we made the double substitution. Duffy on for Brown, who we'll get to in a moment, Griffiths on for El Yunusi, who was virtually anonymous. I mean, you're looking also at Rogic, and I spoke out earlier on about Tommy Rogic. There was a couple of passages of play, Lawrence, where he gets the ball and he glides past 2 or 3 Hibs players. The ball stuck to his foot. He's a wizard. He's an absolute magician, but he's doing it at the halfway line. Now, that's only effective from Tom Rogic if he's doing it on the 18-yard line. Depends who he's got to hit in front of him, who's pulling the defenders about, doesn't it? Well, he looks up and he's got no one because it's just a Yeti, and obviously, that's not a Yeti's game. No. Is it? So, if he's got Griff or Eddie running off the shoulder of a Porteous, it's different, isn't it? Well, I think... That. No, we're not. We're actually not. And I think when you're looking at the shape, you can talk about individual players all day long, but when you're looking at the shape, you can tell Celtic weren't creating enough. there was a couple of occasions where Ayer played a very simple crossfield pass to Frimpong, and that opened up the Hibs defence more than the 20 passes around a horseshoe and then a reverse horseshoe, which seems to be what we are doing constantly at the moment and creating nothing. And then, you know, if you think about, if we had like Salt and Frimpong higher up the pitch with two in the middle, you're then going toe to toe with the Hibs defence. They're probably then going to pull a man back. That opens up the midfield scenario with Christie, El Yunusi and Roger, and the whole game looks different. Now that was kind of obvious watching that all the way through the first half, that kind of change in shape was required. We didn't do it until 71 minutes. And I think that's, for me, one of Neil Lennon's biggest failings this season. It's his failure to act when things aren't working.
When you look at the change of shape, the only width we've got in the team is either Frimpong or Diego, isn't it? None of the attacking midfielders, Rogic, Oy, Christie, they don't like an outside.
No.
So the only way we're getting round him is using Frimpong. Comes in for a fair bit of heavy treatment. You saw it in the Rangers game, they just 2 or 3 players on him because they thought that's how they're going to get. That's the Celtic plan. Get it to Frimpong, try and get round the back, create something. On the other side, it's Diego. So we don't have a lot of options of going wide. Lennon needs to be able to change it on width. He's restricted. Does he stick with 4-2-3-1? You know, how long does he keep playing that system when it's not working? Why is he sticking with it? Why aren't Griffin and Eddie fit or able to start? Surely, you know, if all 4 of the forwards are fit, you're looking at Griffin Eddie. But they're only called on when we're 2-0 down, or we're 0 each with 20 minutes to go.
See, when you look at the number of podcasts we've done, I'm going to get to the comments in just a second. I appreciate the amount of people who are getting involved today. There's a lot of Celtic fans wanting to get involved because everybody has an opinion on the situation just now. But we've done a couple of really in-depth conversations on our podcast earlier this season where we were talking about the transfers that we'd brought in. And, you know, we know how people love to take snippets of the videos and bring them up as memes, Lawrence, just to remind you how wrong you were. But we're going on about how great the transfer window was. And on paper, you're looking at it thinking, well, Shane Duffy comes in. Is he an upgrade on Joso Simunovic? Back then, you probably would have said yes on paper. At the moment, is a resounding no just now. But I'm not writing Shane Duffy off yet. Barkas for Fraser Forster, the jury was out. At the moment, Barkas isn't even getting a game, and I think 100% of Celtic fans would say it's definitely not an upgrade on Fraser Forster. Turnbull, I don't think he was in to replace anyone as such, and he certainly hardly played. Laxalt is an upgrade on Johnny Hayes. Challenge anyone to argue that. Ajeti, again, who was he replacing? Is he an upgrade on Klamala? I don't think you look at Ajeti as a third choice striker. He'll be pushing for the first team jersey or to partner one of the other two. And the El Yunusi that I've seen this season has certainly been more effective than the El Yunusi of last season, the second half of last season anyway. But when you're talking about putting it on the players, Lawrence, on reflection at this stage of the season, have our transfers, have our new arrivals been good enough? Do we need to actually strengthen the squad further?
You know, you definitely take Diego. You say he's been a good transfer, haven't you? And he's only here on loan.
Mm-hmm.
Out of that, where else we've not seen enough of Barkas or Turnbull to make any kind of judgment. I think although Duffy, he's had his problems, individual errors, part of that, football is a team game, but especially in defence, the defence is really no recognised structure, or you don't know who's going to play from one week to the next. How many defenders are playing in defence for us, whose natural position is defence?
Well, you're playing with two non-centre-halves against Hibs. I know Ayer, when he moves on, I'd be very surprised if, let's say Ayer was to move to Milan, because that's a team that's been linked with Chris Ayer. I don't think they're going to move him back into midfield. I think his transition to defence has been very natural for him. And he looks like a natural ball-playing defender. So, but I take your point, you're playing with two centre-halves who are not natural centre-halves. I mean, that wasn't their original positions.
You've got Frimpong.
He's a right winger.
Yeah, I think his game's improving, but he's not a natural right back, and I don't know if he'll ever make it right back. But you can see he's been putting some work in his final ball. He's an exciting player to watch, but he's not a right back. The defence is going to need reorganised. Did Lenny bring Duffy in or identified a boy at Sampdoria because he wanted to play three at the back? What's stopping him if that's what he wants to do, playing three at the back? Is it injury? Is it COVID? When will we see Julian back again? Lenny made some comments during the international break that led us to think that Julian would be fit again. So I don't know if he's fit.
Julian, well, I would hate to think that of any Celtic player, especially when we need. I mean, it's quite clear that we need somebody like Julian back in the team. The comment that I seen the other day when I said that was, we were all criticising Julian after the Kilmarnock game. I think it was Ayer that got more flack, even though Julian had the individual issue in the game. Ayer was the guy that got dropped. The sooner Julian comes back, the better. Let's get a bit of solidity in the defence. I actually think we need to start playing Bacchus. I'm going to ask you about Thursday night and how you see Lenny lining up, how you feel Lenny should line up. But let's work through some of the comments that are coming through on our various channels, Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and join thousands of Rangers fans who seem to have subscribed to them over the last couple of days. Andrew Nutter, Lennon out for me, not good enough, but we are keeping him. I mean, obviously the kind of news that was coming out yesterday is that Neil Lennon is certainly going to stay. He's not going to leave of his own volition. And the chat is that, the board are backing him. Lawrence, what's your take on that? Do you think that, all I hear is, you've got to give him another game. You've got to give him another eight games. You've got to leave it until the Scottish Cup final. I hear this time and time again, but that league title is getting further and further and further away from our grasp, to the point where we must basically win every single game, including the games against Rangers, from now until the end of the season, and hope that Rangers slip up. So
are the board backing Lenny? I suppose that they're going to back him until they have a replacement. They're not going to come out and say anything other. There's definite rumours that they've approached other people, but who would be available. So I suppose who knows what the Celtic board's thinking is at the moment. As you said, Lenny's not going to walk away. You'd have thought that if they were going to let him go, the international break would have been.
That's your opportunity, yeah.
Aye, you've got a bit of time there to get someone in and look through the video footage of Celtic and of the rest of the league and see what he's got to work with. But they're not taking that, so it would appear that it looks like they're going to stick with him. If you look at it from Neil Lennon's point of view, in the league he's lost one game. He's already come out and said, it'd be unfair to go. But
was that not 2 weeks ago though?
Yep. Yeah, indeed. But
and we've dropped more points since then.
Yep. Yeah. But you're right. It doesn't look like Lenny's decided his time's up. So the board are, it's a bit of a mystery. They've not made an official statement that they're backing him. I think with the rumours and the feeling on social media and amongst Celtic fans, it's probably time of some kind of noise as to what the plan is here.
Yeah, they just seem to be completely ignoring the fact that we're in the throes of actually, losing this league title. And, the feeling that I'm getting from a lot of Celtic fans, David Calder included, 10 in a row is gone. We all know this. I'm of the view, Lawrence, that it's never over till it's over. I mean, in terms of, and I'm not being over sentimental, but we have seen, obviously, massive rebuilding projects within a season. We've also seen teams crumbling, and I actually don't think that's going to happen with Rangers this season. I think they're looking pretty solid, unless it's something along the lines of what Celtic have had to face in terms of injuries and illness. I don't see that they're going to lose many points outside of the Celtic games, and even then, at the moment, Steven Gerrard seems to have the beating of Neil Lennon in the games. So for me, these issues, they can be resolved, but not with the current management and coaching team. We spoke at the very beginning of this broadcast where you said there seems to be something wrong. It seems to be kind of obvious to everybody looking at it except Neil Lennon. There is something wrong. You've got a player there in Edouard who was the best striker we had seen at Celtic Park since his countryman Dembele. There was talk of £30 million moves, £40 million moves. The guy we've seen this season has been a shell of the Odsonne Edouard of old. Now, the player's got to take that. The player's got to take that on the chin 100%. But when you're a manager of a football club, it's your job to motivate and get the best out of your players. You looked at some of the previous managers getting the best out of players who had previously not performed as well. Who is Neil Lennon getting the best out of at the moment? Which player in that team is he getting to perform to levels that they hadn't performed previous to Lennon arriving? I'm struggling to think of a single one.
Well, I suppose it back to the question of who in that team is nailed down their position out of the first 11. Who would you think's a certain starter due to their performances?
I think over the piece that if you were picking an 11, I'm going to ask you to pick 11 for Thursday night. It's very difficult for fans at the moment to agree on the best 11, and that tells its own story. I think there's a few players in there that are certainties in the team, but I think that's also an issue with Neil Lennon, because there's certain players in there that shouldn't be certainties. There's certain players in that team at the moment, Lawrence, who I think need to be dropped, but they're on the team sheet every week.
Without doubt, that's what I'm saying. On form, on the way they're playing, who's nailed down their position in the first 11?
Well, one player who hasn't is Barkas, and Jack Walsh says that he needs a shot against Prague. I'm going to be asking the question in relation to Barkas. You're looking at the fact that he lost his place, and apparently it was due to an injury when he clashed with Shane Duffy. I think he maybe bruised his ribs. He's never come back into the side. He's fit to do so. He was a record goalkeeper signing for Celtic. Do you play him against Sparta Prague on Thursday night?
I'd be playing him. Spent a lot of money on him. Are we saying something in training that is Lenny saying something in training that he's not got it? I know Lenny made a comment about Bain had been a change in his attitude, and then Scott Bain's back in goals. But you wouldn't have thought Barkas would come in as backup for the price he's coming at.
No chance.
I've not seen any howlers from him. He looks really good with the ball at his feet. He moves the ball quick for us, gets on the attack quick. I would start him. We need to see what we've got in this keeper. He starts for me.
I actually said before the Hibs game it was time, Lawrence, to get back to the point of what was the plan this season. Well, the plan was Barkas and Duffy, right? That was the plan, was it not? Both players were fit to play and they didn't get a sniff. I know that Duffy came on for 19 minutes. I mean, I'm not going to overanalyse Duffy's performance in those 19 minutes, but I thought the time to make that change was on Saturday, and I still believe that it needs to be made on Thursday night. Now, if we go out on Thursday, Lawrence, and it's basically the same team as Saturday, then I think you're more as well. You'd be as well just chucking it, because you're not actually playing what's in front of you. You're thinking that things are going to resolve themselves, and I felt that was the same against Hibs. For Neil Lennon to come out and say that it was a great win at Motherwell, I find that astonishing to come away with that statement. It wasn't a great win. It wasn't a great one.
It was great to get one.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the amount of chances Motherwell had, and we'd saying just about every chance we had. So, I think I was in the studio for a game. We were talking even after we went off here. Look, that's not a 4-1. That the scoreline definitely flattered to deceive in that one. So yeah, if we go out with the same team, we've got a manager that's come in going, I can't defend the players. In the last few games, it's almost as if he's out of answers. Well, he's got a chance to answer it on the park again, and if he just comes out with the same lineup, you're going, Lenny, nothing's changed yet.
It's too passive, Lawrence, and I think that's why we're frustrated when we're watching the game against Hibs. We go 2-0 down and no changes are being made. And when you make a change, I don't mean a substitute, because if you're just going to take somebody off and put somebody else on, it's not going to change the flow of the game. I mean, Edouard could not be that influential if he's not getting the delivery, and yet he wasn't getting the delivery. So just by putting Edouard on doesn't make the other players change the way they're playing and all of a sudden give him a different style of delivery. So the changes that were required have not been made, and I think that could be said all season when you're actually looking at the failure to react. You know, if Lennon was out there at half-time making changes, trying to make it work, trying everything at his disposal, using and utilising the 5 substitutes, and it still wasn't working, then at least you're looking at Lennon thinking, well, he's trying to make the change. I don't even see that. It's just too passive for me.
Well, if it's a player that's just like for like, and especially if it's Eddie, it's going, you're going, well, why did he not start the game? You know, there's no doubt he's a better player than Ajeti. It's not just that Ajeti's having an off day. So you're thinking, well, why is Eddie not started? You know, sometimes, you know, players do better against different types of players. Or somebody picks up an injury, you can go, right, fair enough for, you know, a like-for-like player. But the huge question is, why is Eddie not starting? And we don't seem to be getting anything on why he's not starting.
No, we're getting something from Lennon that just makes us all think there's something wrong. You know, the comments that Lennon's making about Edouard is, you know, the first comment he made that was concerning is that the transfer talk was switching him off. And you think, well, that's fine, but that was weeks and weeks ago. And then Lennon's going to have a word with him. And you think, well, the boy's just come back from France, having excelled once again for France under-21s. He's a record holder at France. And he comes back, it looks like a shell, a shadow of the player that we know he can be. Yeah, that comes down to the player. Of course it does, Lawrence. But then you're also looking at the manager to get the best out of each individual player. You know, and I'm throwing this out to everybody who's tuning in, because people are tuning in big numbers at the moment, because everybody's feeling quite passionate about what's going on at our club. And I would ask, what player, if any, do you think Lenny's actually improved on an individual basis? Give me one player in that Celtic side that you believe Neil Lennon has improved, or has improved under the tutelage of Neil Lennon second time round. Stephen Forbes, welcome back to the show. Stephen, other than a managerial change, he's asking what changes for Sparta Prague on Thursday. Well, Stephen, I don't think, I'm getting the feeling that that's not going to happen. Certainly not this week. Lennon and the team need a win, so it's possible we can expect a lineup similar to Motherwell and Hibs. El Hamid for Frimpong to give him a rest. I thought, again, it's a good point actually, I thought after the terrible challenge against Motherwell that Frimpong might have been rested against Hibs. Yep. I know you're a big fan of El Hamid, particularly defensively, Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would change it to 3-5-2. I don't think Lenny will, but at this time, I think Lenny's just going to put out the same team. You know, which, if it is, you're going, Lenny, you need some answers. And you know, if he puts out the same team and gets a win, you're like, brilliant, but what's the likelihood of that the way that unit's performing?
Very unlikely, you know, and very unlikely indeed. I mean, we've seen this, you know, this is history repeating itself. We've seen it after the Ferencváros game, where a lot of people were very, very critical of Neil Lennon for not playing a recognised striker from the start, and we followed that up with the exact same lineup. So we've seen it before, and you just hope, you know, Lennon's putting the team out and just hoping that it resolves itself without a change in personnel, without a change in shape. That can be particularly frustrating. We're going to be asking those who are tuning in to give us the lineup that they would choose for Thursday night. People say that it's a meaningless game. Now, I don't think there's ever such a thing involving Celtic as a meaningless game. There's a bit of pride at stake, certainly in Europe this season, Lawrence, but I also think that I'm looking ahead to the next game. So the European game, you can't just put that to one side. You've got to try and get a team that can blend and gel together. You get the partnerships in the centre-half position, hopefully up front. And you start to get a bit of shape and a bit of momentum together. And it starts on Thursday night. It should have started weeks ago. And it's a stop-start season for me. I'm of the view that it's not going to start. I'm of the view that this isn't going to turn around. Neil Lennon can't turn it around. We need a sea change. And in that, we need a managerial change. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the names and obviously the figures who have been mentioned over the last few days. But on Thursday night, if he doesn't make a change, Lawrence, you've got to ask yourself, is he resigned to the fact that he's on his way out? Or is he resigned to the fact that we're not going to win this league? And that saddens me even more. Got to say, because Celtic are my priority.
You know, if he doesn't make a change, is he bereft of answers? Does he just seriously not know what to do with the players at his disposal? Is he saying, this is the best team? Because I keep putting it out, and this is the best formation. And he's obviously put out what he thinks is the best. I think the evidence in everybody's eyes is That's not working just now.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
if Lenny
definitely not
sticks by it
working.
again, you know, you're kind of going, well, what are you saying that we're not? Surely there's got to be something better there. Could he play 3-5-2? Could he play Barkas, Julian Ayer and Duffy? Is it 3 at the back? Diego, Frimpong? Play Beaton as the holding midfielder. McGregor and Christie in front of him with Rogic just behind it, a front to Griffiths and Eddie.
There's a lot to consider. I mean, it's a game-to-game basis at the moment, Lawrence. We're looking at this game-to-game. There doesn't seem to be any kind of fluidity to the Celtic side. You can barely look beyond the next fixture that's in front of you because, I mean, this is a team that absolutely dismantled Celtic at Celtic Park just a matter of weeks ago. You're going to their home turf and it could get a bit messy, you know, if Neil Lennon doesn't make big changes to the side. Now, what I would say is we have IH Decorating, and I'm sure IH Decorating will not mind me saying that they are the first to get on board as a sponsor for our quadruple treble weekender. So what we've done, and I don't mind calling it a quadruple treble, let's not forget that we are chasing history on the 20th of December. But on the 19th and 20th of December, we're having a massive weekend, Lawrence. We're going to go live for 24 hours. We're splitting it up into 2 segments of 12 hours, 8 to 8, both days, covering the game. We're trying to enlist as many Celtic-minded shows as possible. We've got quite a few already on board. So we've got St Rocks are going to be taking an hour up. They're going to be broadcasting for an hour. We've got 4 Tims and a podcast confirmed that they're going to be involved. We've got the Celtic Ray podcast taking an hour. And we've also got Celtic Fans TV just confirmed, and I'll put it out on Twitter after the broadcast. CFB as well. Callum McFadden is on board. So we've got 5 slots taken up already. Loads more people interested. We're going to have interviews with ex-players. We're going to have some music. We're going to have some comedy. It's going to basically be 24 hours of fundraising, Lawrence. And I'm going to try and get as much of the Axom team involved as possible. If it's a travel restriction issue, then they'll be dialing in as you have today. And what we're asking for is we're asking for sponsors to sponsor each individual show. So each 1 hour segment is up for sponsorship, and IH Decorating are the first on board. So well done to everybody who's involved with IH Decorating. They get involved in the Bulletin quite a bit, and it's an absolute pleasure to be involved with yourselves for the big weekender on the 19th and 20th. What other Celtic podcasts should we get on board? I've not got any issue. I mean, obviously, we've got some of the guys already on board. What other Celtic podcasts do you think need to be part of the charity weekender, Lawrence? I mean, you know, I don't get much time, to be honest with you, to listen to many because I'm always in the studio. But what's your thoughts?
Will the boys from Down Under come on? Is it?
That'd be brilliant, aye. Why not? I'll throw out a message to them.
And 24 hours would suit them.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going 8 to 8. There's going to be, I'm sure they're going to be up for the game. The 4 hours around the game, we're going to be covering the match and obviously everything we normally do on the match day for that. But the lead up to that game, let's get some comedy involved. Let's get some musicians playing. After the game, let's talk to some big Celtic fans about the reaction, and hopefully it's a good one after the quadruple treble. It's going to be a massive weekend. There's going to be 4 charities that will be confirmed very, very soon. We're raising funds for homelessness. We're raising funds also for mental health. Lawrence, we're going to be supporting vulnerable adults and vulnerable children, children who might wake up with no Christmas presents on Christmas Day. We're trying to raise as much funds as we can to support 4 areas of society who are particularly vulnerable, particularly at Christmas time. So I can't wait. It's going to be massive. Yeah,
looking forward to it. Almost as much as I'm looking forward to winning 4 trebles in a row.
Yeah, it's a massive weekend for Celtic fans. IH Decorating is coming in via YouTube to say that we need to go with Barkas, Ilhamid, Ayer and Julien. I hope Julien's back. Lack salt and let them form an understanding. I think that's key. And that was where I was coming from at Hibs there, where I suggested we should play Barkas and Duffy. Some people might boo and hiss at that, but there needs to come a point where they get over whatever it is that's affecting them, because form is obviously temporary, right? So form is temporary. They can play through that. Barkas has sat it out for a few weeks. Duffy is sitting it out even when he's the only centre-half fit and available to play. He's still sitting it out. So I think when you look at that defence, that seems like, for me, a good shout. Barkas, Ilhamid, Ayer, Julien and Laxalt. Would you buy into that for Thursday? Yeah.
back four looks more solid. Straight, you're putting El Hamid instead of Frimpong. For me, I'd go 3-5-2. But if you're going to go for it at the back, that looks solid, doesn't it? It's but we do need to get a settled back line, and players need to get an understanding. I think Diego's nailed down his place, although I'm a big fan of Taylor. I think Diego is just...
You were a big supporter of Taylor, weren't you, when he was getting a lot of stick earlier on in the season, Lawrence? You were standing up quite a bit for Taylor. I think there's been times this season where I would have preferred more defensive full-backs. I can see what Neil Lennon's trying to do with like Salt and Frimpong. But when you're watching the game against Hibs and they're failing to break it down, there's also the question of why they're failing to break it down. Well, I didn't see a lot of like Salt and Frimpong in the final third because we weren't playing those diagonal passes. We just were releasing the players. I seen Rogic playing deep to try and get the ball. Yet he does that. That we shouldn't be getting pinned back. We should be pinning back a team like Hibs on the back foot. No disrespect. They had all the time in the world. I've seen Porteous looking up, taking his time, playing the ball out of defence. If we had two up front, it's as simple as that, and that's only one aspect of it. Then, we're not only going toe to toe with them, we're starting to stretch them. If you've got a player like Griffiths, he stretches the defence, Lawrence. He gets them on the back foot.
Yeah, Griff. If you get Griff's done, everybody's got to worry about it, and they can't give him any space because they know even 35 yards out he gets the ball. Griff can get that in the back of the net. It's some players you could say, well, he's got to come in a bit, he's not going to shoot he's got no chance, not with Griff. So yeah, they need to kind of look after him, and it's the same if it's Griff and Eddie that's starting. It gives them two guys that can't give any space at all to. But yeah, it's a strange one. But it's a team we seem to lack width. It's you get three attacking midfielders. I don't think any of them, from what I've seen, particularly like going wide, they seem to prefer coming in. Mm-hmm. So where's the width coming in the team? It's all either Diego or Frimpong.
Yeah, and again,
and that's a lot of...
There's a lot of onus in two players, yeah.
Yeah, especially in the back four. When there's not three at the back, it's a lot of onus, isn't it? You're
definitely.
One of your defensive mids has got to drop back a lot quicker and plays a centre half when they're going on, which doesn't seem to be happening effectively for us at the moment.
It's not. Let's talk about Scott Brown. I've seen a lot against Hibs that I was disappointed in. I feel that he's regressed this season. We've been hearing it season on season, and you hear a lot of Celtic fans, you wrote him off, he's lost his legs. You hear that time and time again about Scott Brown. He's regressed this season. His performances simply are not where they should be. There was a lot of the play going through Scott Brown where you could have missed him out. I noticed very often during the game, balls that were coming to Brown, he was just playing the second ball that could have been the first ball. Almost like pointless playing the ball to Brown, just play it to the next man, which was often lack salt. The reaction to giving away a penalty in such a massive game, the demeanour there, the Scott Brown of old, that's not what I would expect. People say that Brown is the leader and that, he's certainly not a guy that's chucked it. When you look at Neil Lennon's reaction, Neil Lennon criticised Brown after the game. He certainly did criticise him after the game. And of course, he took him off during the game, 71 minutes in. It's absolutely no coincidence that Celtic's game completely changed in the last 19 minutes when Brown was off the park. Is it time to remove the captain from the starting lineup?
Listen, I can remember Tommy Burns dropping Paul McStay.
Yeah, against Hibs, I remember it.
Yep. And McStay certainly come back, and his game went up a few levels when he was back in the team. I think it is time to give Brown a rest or drop him, whatever it want. And that penalty he gave away. What's Brown thinking? It's. I know when he was a younger player, you used to kind of say he'd get a rush of blood to the head, but 36 and he's given away. The Hibs player must be laughing. The Brown's falling for that. It's just shocking penalty giveaway. We looked at a better team without him. We're moving it quicker. Maybe Hibs, 2-0 up, 20 minutes to go. They're thinking, don't lose anything here. That's part of it. But yeah, I would drop Brown and I'd put Beaton in as a defensive mid. I think he'd do a better job there. There's a couple of things about our team. We seem to lose a lot of goals from set pieces and corners. We're not a particularly tall team. I'd move Beaton out of defence and into defensive midfielder. You could have three big centre backs behind him. Hopefully that would kind of address the kind of soft centre we seem to have.
I wonder if Big Wanyama fancies coming back from Montreal in January. I think I would welcome him back with open arms, and Big Foster and Benkovic. I'm just reminiscing. Sorry for doing that from time to time. Back to the good old days. We're going for 10 in a row and a quadruple treble, and we're reminiscing about other players. But I think when you're looking at Brown and the level of his performance, there's absolutely no doubt for me that his performances, similarly under Ronnie Dyler, when you're looking at the senior pros, that there was a bit of mutiny in the camp. We know all about it. Brown was involved in that. You're looking at that team there. You're looking for people to be leaders. Neil Lennon's been using a lot of words around the team. He's called them slack. He's called them lazy. That was some of the words after the Hibs game. You're then asking for a reaction. Does that get a reaction out of a player when you're basically criticising their commitment?
Well, sometimes it does. Doesn't appear to be at the moment. It's carrot or stick sometimes for players, but I think perhaps Lennon's saying, I can't defend him now because he has been trying to defend him all season. That didn't work. I think we are looking at a manager that looks like he's out of ideas. Players that for me, that have got their position and form just now, and the way they're playing is probably Diego, Christie and McGregor. Out of that three, who else has got a position on what they're doing in the park that you would say, yep, stick with him?
That's quite concerning.
Maybe Ayer.
That's quite. I would say Ayer. Yeah, I think Ayer comes in for some criticism from some sections of the support, but I think he's pivotal at the moment. We need him to continue in his current form. What he requires is a bit of backup now. What I've seen from Duffy, I've seen Duffy, talking Ayer throughout the games and maybe giving him a lot of the defensive fundamentals, if you like, in terms of positioning and stuff like that. We've seen a lot less of Ayer going on these big galloping runs that I loved so often, but he's maybe concentrating more on the defensive element of his game. I think he can bring the likes of Laxalt and Frimpong into the game with his crossfield passes as well, Lawrence. It's just a case now of getting somebody to partner him. And not only that, and I go on about this time and time again, you need the central defensive partnership to be right, but you need the goalie behind them to be right, and you want a run of games for that three, that triangle at the back. And if you get that right, there's a starting point, because in terms of the offensive players, I'm not too concerned about guys like Laxalt and Christie, El Yunusi, although he's not yet got that consistency. I think we've got enough good strikers. Take your pick. Any two of the three, Ayeti, Edouard and Griffiths, but make sure it's two. You've got Rogic back onto a game. So I think offensively we've got the players. It's the defence. It's quite obvious. We need to try and get the partnership that works. But changing the team time and time again, or not changing the side that isn't working, isn't the way to go. I think you go out there, hopefully Julien's fit. If he is, play him, Ayer, and like IH Decorating said before, with Barkas behind him, and let's see if we can start creating a partnership there.
Yeah, definitely going to get Barkas in. For me, I don't think the four at the back's working for us at the moment. I'd definitely go three at the back. And, I think a Duffy, Ayer and Big Chris Julian, if he's fit, you've got a fairly solid back three. Takes a wee bit of defensive onus off of both Diego and Frimpong then. In front of him, definitely I'd give Brown a drop and give him a rest, whatever you want to say. I'd sit Beaton in front of him.
Oh, well, I mean, Nir Beaton again is someone I think who, for me, would be surplus at the moment, because I think we're looking for something that's up in the game and up in the tempo, Lawrence. But we'll see, because he's a favourite of Neil Lennon's. Of course he is. He's one of the guys I was referring to, who seem almost undroppable under Neil Lennon. Howard Roark, just for a wee bit of humour here, is referring to big Alfred Molino today, Lawrence, but I guess that's you and not me, because there is a striking resemblance there. So there you go. We've got Robert Duvall, Alfred Molino, Robert De Niro, and Doc Cotton. So we've got loads of lookalikes on a Celtic State of Mind. Now, Caplo Mark, who comes on regularly, how do you seriously get players back on side when you're calling them lazy? This is a big thing for me. If you've got the fragmentation of relationships within a football club, and I used the example at Hibs because obviously ultimately it lost Neil Lennon his job. these personal issues that he has with certain players. There's no going back a lot of the time with footballers, Lawrence. They just won't play for you.
Yeah, some people, you cross the line. That's it. Whether it's fair comment or not, it's crossing the line. I mean, I think we can all say there's been lazy performances out there. There's things that players, I think, look at the penalty. Why aren't you following that ball in? Why aren't you tracking the runner? It's, a lot of stuff has been so basic of late. Yet, is it laziness? Is it they're just not willing to play for Lenny? Who knows? But yeah, if Flery calls it out, he's looking to get reaction out of the player. What happens if he doesn't? What if the player just says, right, I'm not playing for you? Well, Lenny, if he's not going to play for you, you can't keep putting him in the team. For me, because it's the worst of both worlds for Lenny then. He's trying to, call it out. It's not worked, but I'll keep sticking him in the team.
But if you continually do that, and 3, 4, 5, 6 players are no longer on side, Lawrence, that is what I think the definition of losing the dressing room is. And I think that's where we probably are. I think that's where we've been for a wee while.
If we've been that way for a while, I'm sure the board would be aware of that.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up, because Joe Porter comes in to say that Lennon has been back then. What's happening here? I mean, you say the board are aware of it. Is it the old football cliche of getting the backing of the board one day and 3 days later you're on your bike? Do you think that's where we are?
It's often the kiss of death. I suppose only 10 minutes ago we said they have to come out and do something. They have to come out and say something. We're all waiting for some kind of signal from them. Everybody already knew it was at the stage. That's a stage you never want to be at as a football manager, that you need the board to come out publicly back you, because things are pretty bad if that's happening. But we knew the board had to come out and say something. They have to let the fan base, and certainly the feeling amongst the fans, know what's going on. Are they backing Lennon? What exactly is the plan here? Yeah, talk about kind of Lenny not being able to defend the players, or we're saying Lenny doesn't have a plan. Well, what's the plan from the club? Why was the social media so quiet? Were they expecting to do something that they cancelled just about every announcement, bar the shop's still open?
I know. It was quite unusual. The silence was deafening. A couple of comments coming through. Thank you, guys. Albert McCready, James Docherty. The whole team has regressed, not just Scott Brown. That's finding it difficult to argue with that.
We're not the team of the second half of last season, are we?
We're certainly not, and that's why there's the concern, and that's why when your gaffer's coming out, your leader, your iconic leader, Neil Lennon's coming out and talking about culture change, lazy players aggravating and agitating for a move, then that's where you feel that there's an issue. It's not a rumour, it's not one of these pundits, the shock jocks that come out and say, I've heard this and I've heard that. It's coming from the camp, it's coming from the gaffer. There's an issue, massive issue. Yep. And the board aren't acting, Lawrence. Did you expect them to act? Well, perhaps not. I've seen a lot of comments coming in. If this happens on Thursday, if this happens against Ross County, how many ifs does Neil Lennon get?
I would expect it if they were going to act, they'd have been put into place whatever plan they would have had international break. But then again, is there a St Mirren 4-0 Mowbray moment coming up? Would that force it if something like that happened, or would they just keep sticking?
It is, well, I'm not comparing St Mirren to Sparta Prague, but in terms of a European humbling and embarrassing result on the very stage that we continually say is our stage, as a European club, as a club who feels that they're moving into the echelons of the elite, as a club who uses a European stage to entice players from other academies, from the likes of PSG and Manchester City, to come and play for Celtic. If a 4-1 humbling isn't that defeat, what is that defeat?
Well, that game, I struggle to remember it as bad a European result at home. I know kind of Zamek's away, Neuchâtel Zamek's away was bad, Artemisia Bratislava was bad away. But their away games, what was, against that standard opposition, what was as bad a result? The 3-2 win against Dundalk, maybe? I don't know. Can you remember a worse home European result against... And not just that standard opposition, that opposition that had their second team out. more or less.
You're right. It's the standard, because obviously we've been humbled in Europe. We've been humbled against some great sides, PSG, Barcelona. I don't want to get beat and completely decimated the way that we did against these sides. But when you're getting humbled against a side like Sparta Prague, and by the way, I've seen nothing since that result that would suggest that there's going to be any difference on Thursday night. And that's why I think Neil Lennon, because he's still going to be in charge on Thursday night, by all accounts, he needs to make big changes. And by big changes, I'm talking about players like Scott Brown. Now, the point that Paul Cockwell's making, why play Brown when you've got a £3 million player in Turnbull not getting a game? Why is he not getting a game? He was one of the most promising players in Scottish football. We chased him for over a year. He's not getting a game. He started one game.
Yeah, I mean, Brown's certainly... he's definitely not the player of last season, and I think he'd benefit from a bit of time out of the team. Has his relationship with Lenny broken down? Don't know. Don't know what's going on there, but I don't think he's keeping his place on current form. I don't think that's what's keeping him in the team. I don't think his current form's enough to merit him being on the team sheet every week. We've got to try and find something that works. Obviously, we know Turnbull's another COVID-related absence. So he won't be available Thursday because of that, really. It's COVID. We've got to try someone else in there. For me, I know you're not a big fan of Beaton. I would try Beaton and allow us to push Calmack a bit further forward.
I'd love to see McGregor playing higher up the pitch, Lawrence, for sure. And again, my issue isn't with Beaton. My issue is playing players out of position. That's my issue.
If we play 3-5-2, you get down in midfield. You've got Beaton just screening those three centre halves. Is Sparta Prague not at the time to try it? We need a performance. We need to try something that's going to work. Surely we can't just stick with the same again. It would appear, if you've done that, it looks like the manager's out of answers then, doesn't it?
I think he already has shown that he's out of answers. And Thursday night, I think will strengthen that. I remember watching the game against Lille, Lawrence, thinking, wow, what are we watching here for 60 minutes? The shape was completely different. Everybody was moving in channels, and you could actually see them in banks of players. You could see it. You could see the lines. And that form of organisation, you see Neil Lennon on the sidelines giving instructions, which, for weeks we hadn't seen. I thought that was the moment. That was the moment. Weeks later, another 2 European games later, and it was just a false dawn.
If you remember, he kind of came out fighting in the press before the Lille game. You saw a bit of the old Lenny back, didn't you?
I think we did. I think we did. We've seen a bit of the old Lenny back. But unfortunately, again, I use this word regression. It's regressed back. It's regressed back the way again. Yeah,
he seems to have... He's quieter now in his interviews, isn't he? He seems to be more passive in himself. Whereas, there was a bit of spark about him before the Lille game. Is that having an effect on performances? But yeah, the Lille performance for 60 minutes was brilliant. But Sparta Prague, he surely got to change things. And as a home result in Europe, seriously struggle to think of a worse one. I can't remember a worse one against that standard opposition.
Now, there's one other thing I want to discuss before I let you go, Lawrence, and that is there was an interesting interview last night with Eddie Howe. Now, I was speaking yesterday to Kevin Graham about some of the names that have been flying about in relation to the big question: if Neil Lennon goes, who do you bring in? I must admit, I did like a couple of the suggestions. I liked one suggestion that Kevin made, which was a manager plus Sean Maloney as the coach, because, obviously I got a bit of stick for saying Martinez and Maloney. I'd love a partnership of someone plus Maloney. You get that figurehead plus Maloney. So I'm not sold on Martin O'Neill coming back. I'm not sold on Gordon Strachan coming back. I think, Eddie Howe is a name that keeps coming up time and time and time again. People say, why would he be interested? He was homesick. That's why he left his last job. What's your take on Eddie Howe and the job he did at Bournemouth?
So take him up first division, didn't he? Up second to, was it Doncaster or something? Then up to Premier League. I think he had one good season there, and then they started falling down lower and lower in the league. Went to Burnley. Is that right? Didn't do too well at Burnley, back to Bournemouth. For me, I'm looking at God. Well, I think he got awarded Football Managers, the Premier Football League's Manager of the Decade or something.
Yeah, yep.
Is winning, basically what he's done is one promotion to the, for me, all he's done is one promotion to the EPL. Is that good enough?
It was for Brendan Rodgers, because that's all he'd ever done.
So where did Brendan's team finish in the EPL?
Second, which means he's not a winner.
Yeah, he finished second, but it was a lot better performance than Eddie put in. For me, I'm looking at Eddie Howe.
But Eddie Howe, no, that's fine. But when you look at the makeup of the spending of Bournemouth compared to Liverpool,
yeah.
And the fact that Liverpool had Suarez, and it's relative. At the end of the day, Brendan Rodgers, we think of Brendan Rodgers as, at one point anyway, all hail Brendan. Brendan wasn't a serial winner when he came to Celtic.
No, but you've talked in the past about the need to bring in an elite manager to spend the January budget on it. Did you tell Eddie Howe an elite manager?
Well, Jim Orr came on and asked the question, what is an elite manager? And I thought that was quite a good question, because, it's a term these days, Lawrence, that people throw about all the time, isn't it? In football, elite academies, elite clubs, elite managers. For me, you've got to be a winner. I think that's imperative. You've got to be a winner before. Now, Brendan Rodgers wasn't a winner. He might have sold himself as a winner. He might have had the winning smile, but he wasn't a winner. But at that time, he certainly was the right man for Celtic.
Ronnie was a winner before he came in. Ronnie was a winner before he came in.
Yeah.
He was a winner when he was here.
He was an up-and-coming coach, highly rated. Man City were looking to get him involved in the academy at Manchester City. Ronnie Deila was on the radar of many clubs all over Europe. It was something of a coup when Celtic brought him in. I think the biggest mistake they made was they made him the manager. That was the biggest mistake with Ronnie Deila. I think bring him in, but he should never have been the manager.
I'm not too sure. I like Ronnie. I think he'd done a lot for development of young players. He called time out at the end. Again, that was a division between players and managers that I think ended Ronnie's time. But Martin O'Neill, I think Martin's time's come and gone. I liked it when he was manager. I wouldn't have Martin back. Gordon Strachan.
I loved O'Neill's time at Celtic. I loved Martin
brilliant.
O'Neill, and he went on. He did well at Aston Villa, but I was of the same view as yourself. And Kevin Graham, whose name's just popped up on the screen, actually says to me, "Well, think back to what you said about Martinez and Maloney. If you took O'Neill with Maloney, would you take that as a partnership?" I think my biggest concern is Martin O'Neill comes in with someone like Roy Keane, and I just think that's the worst case scenario that we could possibly face. But if he was to come in with someone like Maloney, who's an up-and-coming coach, one of the most highly rated coaches in European football, started off at Celtic, would he leave Belgium? I hear all that. I think Belgium have got one game in the next so many months. I mean, we're at that stage, Lawrence, where we need to do something. And that something isn't, I've seen so many people saying Alex Neil. I've mentioned Alex Neil a few times. Not for me. Jack Ross, I rate him highly, but for Celtic, no thanks. I think we need to get... The O'Neill thing is, you've got the familiarity. You know what it is to be a Celtic manager and what the club demands and what the fan demands. And you've got the coach. Because O'Neill is not then dealing with the players day to day, never did. You speak to Sutton and Hartson, and O'Neill never did deal with the players day to day, did he?
No, but no, O'Neill, I don't know if he'd be my first choice. I don't think Strax would come back, Strachan, because last time I spoke to him, when we were at things we were allowed to attend, Celtic nights, in person, Strachan said he's lost the anger to be a football manager, so it's not for him. Maybe that's changed. Maybe he's watching a Celtic performance, he's getting angry. I don't know. I would hope so. If we're going to bring in a big name manager, how long is it for? Is it to the end of the season? Was there already a plan in for the end of the 10?
Well, as far as we're aware, there was. It doesn't look as though there's much planning going on at the moment, but, we'll wait and see. Kevin Graham does say how. Seemed to suggest last night that he wanted to get back into the EPL. I seem to remember a lot of talk going on today about Brendan Rodgers, but an interview with Brendan Rodgers, maybe a week or 2 weeks before he took the Celtic job, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before, actually, and he said exactly the same thing as Eddie Howe did last night.
And where's Brendan now?
Well, he'll be thinking he's going for the Champions League in the Premier League down in England, but you know where he is now.
He's in the EPL. Yeah, but he done what players seem to do. They use it as a stepping stone. So maybe that's attractive to Howe.
Great point. Brilliant point.
There's no loyalty in football. So could Howe come up and go, right, what's he got left? 6-7 months of this season? Would he then be more attractive if he came up and won a quadruple, a quintuple treble, and 10 in a row? Maybe. Down there. Is there other managers that would look at it during that time? What about Pochettino from ex-Spurs? Would he come up for that period of time?
I think it's
interesting.
I think that's an excellent point. Kevin Graham's saying about Eddie Howe last night, and absolutely Eddie Howe's talking about a future in the EPL. I've then referenced the fact Brendan Rodgers said exactly the same. I wish I could find the interview footage. I think he was running a marathon or something, and they pulled him aside and they asked him. Yep. And that was his view. He wanted EPL, but he saw the Celtic job as that stepping stone to kind of build his reputation back up so that he could get a job. I mean, he was never going to be walking back to the level that he left in terms of Liverpool. He was never going to get back to that level whilst he was unemployed. So I think it's a good point, Lawrence, a very good point. Something we need to consider.
Brendan maybe be thinking that Liverpool will never get back to the Brendan level. It's all about Brendan.
I'm bringing this up from Mark because I love Mark's contribution on the socials and also on YouTube. Yosser Hughes, I don't know if that's a reference to you. This is a 1980s reference, but thanks for bringing that to my mind. Keys a job.
Yep, keys a job, yeah.
There's plenty out there. There's plenty out there who need a job. And by the way, will Celtic be employing one of them? There we go, who knows. But thanks everybody for getting involved today. It's been busy over the last few days because there's a lot of emotion flying about in among Celtic fans, Lawrence, and that's understandable. What we hopefully do on a Celtic State of Mind is give as many fans as possible a platform. We're constantly fighting against moderation in terms of comments, and it's almost a full-time job. But thanks everybody for getting involved today via Twitter, Facebook and on YouTube. If you haven't already, please subscribe. We've got a massive charity weekend coming up on the 19th and 20th. Loads of more names to be confirmed. It's going to be a proper festival really that weekend. Hopefully it's going to be a victorious quadruple treble weekend as well. But all that's left for me to say today, Lawrence Connolly, thank you once again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind, sir.
Thanks. Keep safe, mate.